Welcome to the Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts. We are your international headquarters for resources and ideas and insight in relation to the 9 elements of holistic wellness. Join us as we interview local and international wellness experts and learn how you can implement and improve one element or dimension of wellness at a time. Our experts will share their practical tips on wellness in one of these core areas: emotional, intellectual, occupational, physical, environmental, financial, spiritual, social, or habitual. We created our family of podcasts as a resource for anyone who is looking to integrate the 9 elements of holistic wellness into their daily lives. Welcome to the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm really excited. I have my new friend, Karen DeLoach, joining us. Karen, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jeff. It's a privilege to be here and to talk to your audience. I'm an artist, an art mentor, and my superpower is I'm a creativity specialist. I stir up the creative in others and empower them to be their creative best. And I have a passion for that. I teach in college where I use textbooks that I wrote because I live in rural state in mid-state of South Carolina, where most of my students don't have access to the arts like I grew up in the great east of America, where I had access to the greatest art in the world. And so I created a textbook for them, with 1,800 images and written in and including work that I knew that my very varied ethnic variety of young people can find something to be inspired by, and that gives me great joy.
I love that. Well, let's talk a little bit about art because, um, so full disclosure for my audience, for Karen, I grew up very, very left-brained. When I was a child, I loved to draw, but I had some color blindness issues. So people loved to tell me that I was not doing it right. So I sort of put that little drawing in the background. I also love to write. And I had a 10th grade English teacher who saw potential in me. So she judged me harshly to teach me how to be a better writer. I went into accounting and I said, I'm not done anything creative. I'm happy to say, Karen, for your benefit, that I'm now, I play with Canva. That's my artistic, I love to
Love
make
it.
visuals,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I write books, and that's kind of my passion. So let's talk about the non-artist first of all, because most of my audience is hard-driven entrepreneurs. And I'm sure if you say, you need time with your canvas, they're like, oh my God, time. Um, so let's talk about how practicing art can help and heal people.
I love that question. Thank you so much, Jeff, because I've been an artist all my life, but I also was an athlete and in theater. And I had the same experience that you're describing when I was in art school because I could draw. I learned great drawing skills, but my painting skills were lacking. And I was hoping to learn how to paint. But, when I went to school, the abstract expressionists were ruling, and it was all about inner expression. Well, hello, child of an alcoholic. I didn't know who I was. That's why I was a good actor. Whoever you want is exactly who I'm more than willing to be. And so I didn't have that inner place to draw from, but I knew I love people. I wanted to draw people, paint people. I wanted to paint scenery, beautiful scenery. I love beauty. Well, it was not the era for beauty or for representational. And they used literally 4-letter words to describe my paintings. Well, that shut me down for 20 years. I couldn't finish a painting for 20 years because our right brain, as you describe it, left brain, which is so amazing in its order and its timeliness and its memorization and the incredible problem solving that our left brain brings, that is very rewarded in our education system, by the way. But our right brain is sensitive, which you experienced when you were criticized. It shut you down for a long time. It shut me down. I went into sculpture and I worked in clay and worked three-dimensionally, but every time I started a painting, I couldn't finish it because I came into agreement with that, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm just not good enough. And that took root for a very long time in my soul. And it took healing, and it took a mentor who taught me how to paint. He had been to school in Chicago Art Institute when they still taught you classical techniques of how to paint. Set me free. I learned how to mix and match colors. I learned how to use the color wheel, and those are techniques I'm still using with my students now. I have a whole book, How to Paint, and I'm using what I learned, because no matter who you are, what skills you have, what your desires, you've got to start with these foundational tools, right? And that really has just calls me to blossom in my painting world and my creative world. And I've seen that happen as a mentor and as a teacher. And I love to pass that on to my students. I teach drawing, which is the basic of art. It's cool. You already have that skill. That's not, most of us didn't start with that skill. We had to learn that too. And I teach it, and I teach line drawing and how to separate the left brain from the right brain, because the act of doing it is left brain, but what you're observing and using your imagination to see, that's all right brain. So here's an example. You ask a room of 5-year-olds, do you like the arts? Do you like to paint and color? Do you like to dance and sing, or bang on the drums, or do very, very active creative things? And without a doubt, almost all of them say yes. Now you ask a room of 15-year-olds that same question, maybe 10% say yes. And then you got the guy with headphones listening to Led Zeppelin, my generation music. But what happens in those 10 years is not that they lost their capacity for creativity. It's just somewhere along the line, the reward of the left brain rose up with SATs, tests, quizzes, memorizing, spelling, all of that made our left brain strong, but it crushed our right brain, which is exactly the opposite. The left brain is to serve the right brain. It's the part of us that's quieter, that's stiller, that has intuition, that has imagination, that is in touch with the things inside of us. We're created beings with creativity all over us. And when it's like a diabolical plot to not have us making those connections, it's not either or. The best is both.
Yeah.
And when we deny and we shrivel up and shrink our right brain, we're missing half of our capacity for problem solving, thinking outside the box, coming up with new ideas and inventions and other ways to work with our left brain. And I'm passionate about this. I've been studying lately neuroarts, which is the study of the power of art to heal our soul, our mind, will, and emotions, heal our bodies. And I have experiences from my own studio and students from my own studio of this very thing. That, just you're talking about time, 15 minutes a day, 15 to 20 minutes, depending on which study you read, is all it takes to release serotonin, the happiness chemical, and start empowering your right brain to work with your left brain. Things like taking a walk. Now notice, I'm sure in Alberta where you are, the colors are amazing. Maybe with the snow has covered them all up now. You said you just had
Everything's white, but thank you.
well, I talk about that. That's everything has their winter coats on, right? All the
Yep.
trees and I love the silence and the closeness of the world with the fresh snow. Being a Southern liver now, we have to go to the mountains to go see that happen, or I go visit my children in Germany to see snow. But it's a different world than what you just experienced with fall, maybe with the colors of fall. Noticing those, taking your dog for a walk, or just observing beauty, watching a sunrise or a sunset. It actually brings healing and restoration into your soul to do that. And for me, I live in a very artsy town. I make a point of going to art galleries every single month. I encourage my students to do that. Matter of fact, I give them credit if they do a selfie in front of a favorite artwork. And very many of them have never even been to a gallery or museum before, which is sad. And I'm trying to build them an opinion and to get in a habit of looking at art in a different way. Because when you do draw, when you do paint, when you do dance or write or sing or play an instrument, it changes your perspective on everything else in life. And I've heard students tell me when I just teach them line drawing, they don't see things the same way anymore. They notice things brains more, and it makes them more alive. And serotonin is a real chemical booster just from doing that. And women have 4 times less than men of serotonin. We tend to be more in a melancholy, or even fight depression. And just working with your hands, doing something creative, can empower that part of your brain to be restored. People have been healed of mental fog from just starting to engage and empower their right brain. Is it okay if I tell a story?
Yes, please. And then I have a question, but you tell your story first.
All right. One story of a student of mine who'd spent years in my studio because he was struggling with reading. He was struggling with academics. He had ADD and dyslexia. And he came into the studio and just went gangbusters, doing so well. It gave him confidence to really do better in his other courses. I got close to his mama, who also I made do artwork, and turned out to be great. But he at 17, went to Disney World with his family, got a sinus infection that gave him a brain infection that caused a traumatic brain injury. Matter of fact, a stroke paralyzed him on the right side. It wasn't even expected to live. They had to replace his skull, believe it or not.
Wow.
4 months later, he's able to get a few words out. He can kind of stumble along, still not using his right arm. His mama brought him back to my studio, and I endeavored to teach him to draw left-handed. Meanwhile, he had just won Best in Show in the largest youth competition in our state. Not just best in his age, but best in show from a piece he had done in my studio. So he's just devastated right now. Very quickly, he learned to draw left-handed, his weak hand. I
Wow.
was amazed. His mom was amazed, but even more so, his neurosurgeon called me. I've never called somebody's art teacher before, but what are you doing with this young man? There is healing happening on both sides. He's better with his weak hand than I am, and I'm a surgeon. But it seems those neural pathways he had developed already were still working for him, and they were working to bring restoration. And he's now walking and talking. He has some still limitations with his right hand, and his talking can be a little hesitant, but he's got a life worth living. He's been restored, and I'm just very blessed on, that there's solid proof for me of the healing power of art.
I love that. And I think, anecdotally, I'll share my story just to give you some context. But I grew up, I was incredibly gifted on the left side. I was really good at math, really good at science. And when I wasn't as good at the arts, I inherited a lifetime of criticism in my, kindergarten through grade 5 or 6. By the time I was in high school, I was like, nope, no arts. And I literally shut that side of my brain off, put it in a box, and said, "You're useless. Stay away from me." And fast forward, I spent most of my years as an accountant, very analytical, and I always felt like half a person. And then I had a traumatic brain injury, and I don't want to call it that because it unlocked the box that I had kept my right brain in. And I realized that I was an incomplete human being, and I rediscovered my love. I love images. Don't ask me to tell you what colors they are. I don't care because it doesn't register my brain. But I like to see things. I love the masters in history. But for me, it unlocked my love of writing. And I'm going to tell you that I think I'd written my fifth book before I even contemplated the label I was a creative. I was like, no, I'm not. I write nonfiction. There's no creativity here. But through exploring the writing, I really became a whole person. And I think, both of my kids, we've insisted, they're little Renaissance boys, and they have to learn some art stuff. They have to learn some music. Music is non-negotiable because I've seen so many studies on how it crosses the brain barriers. And realistically, they're both very analytical, very bright kids. And I don't want them to hear the message that shut off half your brain, you'll be fine.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm so glad you got recovery and healing in your right side. You know, we have 4 children, and my husband's a musician and a writer and an artist, and I'm an actor and writer. I mean, and artist. So our children didn't stand a single chance with their left brains. Although one was really good at math and one was good at words and poetry, but they ended up musicians, and they live in Germany. They went there to produce their music and fell in love with beautiful German women, and have given me a couple of little babies, grandbabies to go visit, and they have lived a life. But they had to be homeschooled. To be honest with you, they were not thriving in even private school because weren't they lost their confidence in their ability to learn because they weren't staying on track with the class, especially my second son, who is ADD all the way, just, shiny, and he kind of comes by what, honestly, from me. And I get it. And so he needed to find his way to find confidence. And, the way we learned, we brought him home so he could take 7 hours to get it done if he needed to. And I could, narrow the distractions, at least for certain parts of the day. Desks were just some place to hold the books, not to actually sit at. He was a kinetic learner and learned about learning styles. And the other one we'd done in 2 hours, and he'd be done in 7 hours. But and it's interesting because one of they have a job in Germany to teach English, which we think is just so miraculous that, eventually they did find their left brain strengths, but they were suffering under that criticism because our school systems reward left brain thinking, not right brain thinking. I know they don't want you, tapping out beats on your desk and distracting other students just because that's the beat going through your head at the moment. It doesn't go real well. And so my kids especially my 3 sons did not fit into that school system box, and they were able to thrive, and train them up the way they should go, and really help them find who they were. I didn't want them to suffer like I did with not knowing for so long who I was. And they've really expanded and grown in their lives, living in a foreign country, having to learn another language,
Which
is
is
another.
also crosses that
It
barrier. And
does. Absolutely right. It's left brain, right brain. So it's a good skill. Get on Duolingo if you want to stir up more of your own creativity and you don't really want to be an artist or musician. There's
yep,
just, even appreciation. And I just want to say that to your listeners. You don't have to be an artist to appreciate it. You don't have to be a musician to appreciate it, or a dancer or a singer, just like we
yep,
listen to our favorite kind of music. And it really does soothe our souls.
yeah.
It's not a cliche because it is important as humans. And now another aspect of the arts is I've been delving into AI, and I love AI. I don't know if you've used it for any of your writing, but I just
Before we get into AI, I want to ask you
okay,
a question, and then we'll go
okay,
into AI.
okay.
Um, I just want to point out that the modern educational system that we have, if you think about, a few hundred years ago, we had this system where you were mentored by somebody, a craftsman or a tradesman, and you learned that skill and you became that person. And then, somewhere around the 1800s, whatever it was, we came up with this concept that kids should sit in rows and everybody stares forward. Like literally, we were being trained to work in factories. So I want to talk about, first of all, I want to ask you about art, and then you literally one question ahead of me. So well done. Um, how can we support kids? Because here's the thing, I think most education is geared to one style of learning. The student who can sit still, reading, listening, comprehending. What advice would you give for educators? Because one of the things that I find absolutely fascinating, I talk to teachers and they don't know there's different styles of learning. And you
Mhm.
just mentioned your ADHD child with the tactical. What advice would you give to educators about incorporating multiple styles in a classroom? Is it extra time or does it add value to everybody?
Well, of course, I'm prejudiced. I think it adds value to everybody. I talk to a lot of educators because I am one in my state. We are one of the lowest paying educator states in the nation. We have the lowest we either us or Mississippi, one or the other of us are the lowest ranked schools in the nation. And I think part of it is the history of more rural areas is as you're describing, a system where one generation passed their skills on to the next generation. And there was this continuity of skills that they, nurture nature balance, which, hello, guess which one's left brain, which one's right brain? Nurture and nature, okay,
Yep.
so, you had a system that encouraged that, whereas in you force everybody into the classroom, take them out of the fields, you take them out of the work or whatever they were doing, and try to force something upon them that wasn't their natures or their nurtured. So it's discouraging. And our state, you teach because you love it, not because you can actually make a living out of it. You really have to love your students. So the ones I know are brilliant at trying to keep up because of so many problems children are having with it. We can see from, the ADD, autism, all kinds of learning issues to understand. And the people that I was involved with for 30 years are all, well-educated moms who made a point of finding out what's best for each child. Our fourth child was a girl, late in life, blessing. She could have fit anywhere. She would have had no problem. She didn't have, the same kind of overgrown right brain, and struggled and with her left brain. She is really good, beautifully balanced, and so she would have thrived in school. And we did do co-ops so she could get her social activities in too. But it's a problem, and I'm really hoping it changes. And the teachers that I know that are really truly care about their students find ways to incorporate the creative, find their giftings very early. Okay, you're scribbling on everything, so there's obviously something we need to talk about here. Or you're always humming under your breath, or you're keeping tabs, on the, let's see what kind of superpower is being expressed here that needs to be developed. That's what a good educator does. And I know some very beautiful, great educators. We're not the state where people who just do it for a career do it, because you got to find another way to find value. And I know
Love
I'm
it.
being overblown in my generalization here, but I think there's a lot of really amazing teachers out there that really care about their students and hate that every course is all about, taking some test, some left
One
brain.
percentage of the brain almost. And by the way, Karen, my 10-year-old is the kid who walks around humming. And it's funny because in his class he has a special needs kid who is very musically inclined, but when he hears the music, he's got to dance. And it is so funny because it drives my son nuts because this other kid, he has to stand right next to the source of the music. So
Mm.
he is like right here. And my son is like, why does he have to be in my face? And I'm like, because you're humming. And he's like, I don't hum. And I'm like, yes, you do. And by the way, just for fun, he has his favorite composer. How many 10-year-olds do you know that walk around humming Ode to Joy?
Oh, that's awesome.
And
That's
it
amazing.
is like, it'll make you weep when you hear it. He's got it nailed.
Yeah,
He
it's
gets that as from his mom because dad loves listening to music. I do not want to sing. I do want dance. Please don't ask me to play an instrument because I have two hands that are busy trying to write something. But my keyboard is my musical expression. I write books with a song in my head. Now let's talk about AI.
okay.
And just for the record, I love and hate it. So you
Uh-uh.
can't offend me here. Um, let's hear what you think about, and the fact that you used the word AI invasion earlier tells me a little something. But let's talk about AI and what's its impact on art.
Well, that's such a great question for our time, for now, for this year, for right now in our lives, because it is an invasion that we cannot choose to bury our head in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist, because it exists. It's here. It's not going away. It's going to become more and more part of our lives. And I choose to embrace it. I've gotten on Chat GPT. It's helped me with some of my messaging and marketing and, learning how to say things. I think it's brilliant. But guess which side of the brain AI comes from? It's all left brain, because I don't care. I've seen some of the programs, Rembrandt, and they can make it look like something. Absolutely. but they will never replace our right brain creative brilliance. Our humanity is expressed most beautifully and creatively through our right brain. And as we get back, and I hope to an education system that will allow humans to become more fully engaged with both sides of their brain and learn to incorporate and build those neural pathways and connect them and work together, because that is how we can still maintain our uniqueness and our individuality and our humanity in a world that is AI oriented. AI, artificial intelligence, is just learn to find your path through it, because it's here as an aid, just like anything else. It's here as a help, but it doesn't mean it has to take your job over, or and there are jobs that it's taking over. So you need to find out if yours is one of them, and find out what you can do to prepare yourself and equip yourself. And I would say, prejudiced, that means find something to empower your own right brain brilliance.
Love that. And I think that's, too many people, what I'm hearing, especially in the world of the left brain people, there's the AI is going to replace the human being, and I fully hope so in the mundane, repetitive stuff. Like
Right.
I don't know if AI could automate going to the grocery store and eliminate it from my life. I mean, Amazon is another solution, but you know, I think AI, in my humble opinion, AI is going to eliminate a lot of those straight row classroom desk jobs, where
Yeah.
we're sitting and we're processing and we're crunching numbers. But the reality is, my hope for AI is that it'll cross that right left brain barrier and get more people being whole minded. Because I mean, you think about it, I was really good at what I did, and I was doing it with half a brain, literally.
Yeah.
The
Imagine if you engaged your right brain while you were doing that, how much more in problem solving, outside the box ways of
yeah,
thinking that would have been brought to the table, and still could be. And I think that, either believe it or not, there's a lot of what we would consider right brain jobs that are being taken over. For instance, graphic designers. And I know a lot of people, they're really good at drawing, they're very creative, but to make a living, they got a job as a graphic designer. Is that really who they are? Are they really a painter?
yeah.
Or and they just, this is a way they could make a living. Well, AI is taking over a lot of those kinds of jobs. So I think it's going to force more people back into maybe even their natures to be
Yeah.
creatives, and find a way to make a living at it. We're never going to go away. And the creativity, I believe, my husband and I have a ministry. We meet at home. We have an outreach called Imagine Gatherings, and we co-pastor that, and it's all people that are like your son, humming, and somebody else who wants to dance to that humming, and somebody else that wants to create a painting or a drawing or a sculpt, or wave banners, and somebody wants to bang on a drum or blow a flute or play the guitar or sing. And these things can happen spontaneously. And we don't fit into religion boxes, and we don't want to.
Yeah.
Want to worship our creator in very unique and creative ways. And we feel that simplicity of a 5-year-old. Sometimes I feel like I'm a 4-year-old spinning and dancing, even as I'm going to be turning 70 on my next birthday. There's
Wow.
still that little girl in me that loves to dance before father, and feel his love, and feel his warmth, and affection for me. As there's some songs that just, whoo, I'm right there. I'm right there before him. And we need more of that, because that's part of who we are.
I love it. And I'm just going to say that I love to joke in our household. My four favorite weirdos on the planet all drive around the car together when my family and we go places, because we're just, I've raised my kids to just be who they are. And it's funny, when I was a kid, my mom said, "I hope you have a kid just like you when you grow up." And I realized in my teens that that probably wasn't the compliment I took it as. I reminded her of it recently, and she was like, "Yeah, you were a little bit like, I'm autistic. I was all of those difficult things that every parent goes, oh great, because I'd ask why 1,000 times. Don't change my routine because I will be cranky. Like I was difficult. I get it. But I love that in my boys, and it's like, you just be you, and if the world doesn't like it, they can go around you. They don't have to go through you. And I love that you're, embracing your inner 4-year-old, and that's,
Yeah.
one of the lessons I'm going to share with you that I found in life. I was naive enough to believe that I was on this planet to teach my kids. And that was very left brain. And then at one point, I was watching them playing, and, kids are naturally whole brained. And then we
They
put them in school and we break them. And it's like, why do we do that? But I was watching my kids playing, and there was this combination of music and art, and they're doing all these things, and I was hit by it that they're here to teach me, not me to teach them. And that opened up the whole brain, and I went, okay, this is, all of the little shackles and chains I'd put on my brain. Just, I was like, I can't put them back on, and I won't. So
Yay, that is great. I love that. I birthed them thinking I'm just here to love them. I don't know. Just to love them. And one
love
more
them and learn
story.
from them.
One more story of healing, and this one's not the same healing as I had with my student David, but this one is a woman who had been bringing her children to my studio for years, and I found that she was really talented. And I was preparing for a great big room installation, a porcelain show that was happening the next year, and she came over and told me of her stage 4 breast cancer diagnosis, given 6 weeks to 6 months to live, and she had already started chemo, radiation, was having a mastectomy and a rehab. I mean, it was horrific. So I brought her into my studio to help me with this show. Put her to work. She was good with her hands, and she would go find other things that would come and help us. It's called Taste and See Sweet Shop, the sweet things in life. It was porcelain. It was going to be a whole room. We even refinished chairs and did tablecloth coverings and a wall hanging. And I made I'm a potter, so I did all the pedestals and plates and trays. And then we made cakes and cookies and candies and truffles and painted them and glazed them to look like the real thing. People came into the show, pulling out their wallet to buy a piece of chocolate or a piece of cake, and they're porcelain, so they wouldn't have been very tasty. But Jan didn't know the whole time if she was going to be here for the show. And that activity with her hands, doing art, thinking about the future, thinking about, doing this small thing to create a big vision, got her through all of these stages that she went through with her severe cancer diagnosis, to where not only was she there for the show, she's still here and cancer free. Now, I can't say art healed her, but I can definitely say art worked and distracted her, gave her something to look forward to, healed her soul of the traumas that she was going through. And I'm a believer, I'm an absolute believer. And homeschooling, was great, right, for my family, because of the learning difficulties my children had, and others that I've met that had autistic children, that you don't seem to have any problems at all. You just seem perfect, but they were not thriving in, corporate environments. And, just having come and working with their hands and making stuff and learning art gave them, I don't know, a way to express themselves that wasn't there. And if they're not verbal or not very verbal. And
Yeah.
I see that power of art in so many ways, in our mind, our will, and our emotions. And it is a passion project for me. And anybody that wants to check out, I have a free book that's art as self-therapy, 5 steps for a healthier soul. It's a free downloadable book. You can get it www.karendeloach.com/gift. And we can put that, in the notes.
We
Um,
will, yes.
I hope everybody will find a way to. It's never too late. I want to say that it's never too late. You can't say I can't draw. I can't. You can't because you didn't learn, not because you don't have the capabilities. If you want to, you can. And I'm here to say that I've seen it happen over and over in my life. Certainly in Jeff's, and as he sees this an exploration and blossoming in his own sons, it can happen at all ages. So I say that as an encouragement.
I love that, and I could talk to you for hours, Karen, and that's one of my curses slash gifts. I just love meeting great new people. Now you're the expert at Karen. Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't yet before we wrap up and I go away and go, ah,
Well, I mentioned about, being in ministry, being a spiritual person is certainly one of the most outstanding parts of who I am. And it does fuel every part of it. And I love people, and I love to see people walk in the fullness of who they are. And I just don't think you can do it without being in touch with Creator God. And that I hope everybody does find that kind of peace and joy in their own lives. And in these troubled times, it's the rock that never moves, that won't be shaken. So that's probably my parting gift to everyone is find your place in God and in his love. He loves us. He loves all humans, all the wide variety, all our 10 different fingerprints. He's numbered our hairs, and I have a lot of it, and it changes moment to moment. So he's not off in a distance. He's intimately involved, and we artists, we love that sense of intimacy and closeness that we want to express to others through our work, as we kind of expose ourselves and our way of thinking, and the way we see. Or whether you're a musician and you're sharing what you're hearing. You're sharing what you're hearing. When you write, you're sharing what you're learning and what you're knowing, and it's blessing other people, and it's a good thing. So we're
I
here.
love that, and if I may, I'm going to translate for my left brain listeners. The reality is whether you don't have to be thinking I'm going to go perform on stage at Carnegie Hall or something, but the reality is every time I explore something artistic, and by the way, my kids and I and my wife, this was my wife's idea. We watched some guy on YouTube who draws pictures, and he shows you how to draw these pictures, and we do that as a family thing on a Sunday. um, Even if you're not really worried about that greater inspiration, it helps you calm the noise in your head so that you can hear that voice that is your true essence. And I know some people say that's the universe, some people say it's God. I'm happy if it's just connecting with my true me. But the reality is, I think a lot of left brain people, they get really, really, really obsessed about being the best at their left brain thing. I'm just going to say, and Karen, you can rebut this or add to it. You can't be the best of the best at a left brain thing if you're not incorporating your right brain, because your right brain's going to help you find, intuition or insights or other paths that your left brain would consider too playful or too impractical. Is that fair?
Absolutely. And your imagination and our intuition, inventions, where do you think those come from? Even in that still small voice of God, if we've got this squash, shriveled right brain that is not functioning, and you know what else can paralyze it is perfectionism, and that can paralyze your right and your left brain. Is perfectionism is not our friend. It is not a superpower, because perfectionism is not our goal. I think what you've said before, it's being fully you. It's fully embracing the real you, the real core you. Who am I really? And I know that was quite a journey for me, and for others that I know that had their right brains damaged or crushed or
Yeah.
bruised. It's sensitive. It's a sensitive part of us. And that's good part. It's a good part to embrace. So I say, all you left brainers, you can think circles around me. I won't be able to figure out a word you're saying probably, but let me tell you, you'll think better if you engage and empower and stir up your right brain creativity
And
genius.
underline that, you will think better. So, Karen, I really truly appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you for being on the
My
show.
pleasure. My pleasure. I'll come back sometime if you want.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our show. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to either click the link below or scan the QR code to register and listen to other episodes of our podcast. Or if you think your business or you would be a great guest to be on our show, we're always looking for experts in one of the 9 elements of holistic wellness. We'd love to have you. You can either click the link below or you can scan the QR code and complete our speaker intake form. Thank you, and to your wellness.